Are you ready to rumble? My gosh, I'm trying to get all pumped up here, but we had some pre-show discussion. Was pretty intense, right? It was back in the days of, what do you call it? What do you like? The UFC? Is that what you said?
I said I like UFC, yeah.
Yeah, you want to be a fighter? Is that your thing? So we can introduce you?
Sure.
In the white corner, weighing 55 pounds, soaking wet. Don't worry, Charles, I'm not going to introduce you that way. So, anyway, welcome, and thank you for partaking in the show, the YouTube channel, and any of the podcasts. I want to first go back to the last show and mention a guy that I took a lot of his materials, Jason Stanley, How Fascism Works. It's a great read if you want to know what DeSantis and Trump are up to. He's been actually showing up on a lot of the big talk shows recently. He's a professor, I think, from Yale, and a student of fascism, and it really all connects together. So if you have a minute or two, pick this up and read it and understand and make your own decisions in life. But on a serious note today, I started this evening real down, and we have Clayman Kid and Charles McKenzie and Cesar Garcia here, and we just, a lot of you know I'm an attorney, and I did I was involved in a big mediation yesterday and dealt with death. Somebody that I've been involved with for years now, a few years in the case, and was there with the family at the most important times. And then a day ago, I got a call, and I heard a friend of mine passed, and I've recently had to deal with the death of my wife's brother. And all these people are just super decent human beings. My friend Guy, he was a Lama member. He was a multicultural kind of guy. I mean, he was just a beautiful man. Man, he's a guy I would like to be like him. He was just a marvelous person. And this young man that passed in the case, he was just graduating as an engineer. He was, the pride and joy of his family. And I've just been noticing and seeing and being involved in so many, in my opinion, untimely deaths. And I've just been having a hard time. In my profession, in my job, it just doesn't seem to be like happy stuff. I don't work at Disney, and life is full of surprises and so forth. And we were sitting down, and Charles came in right before the show, and I was saying, I don't know. I don't know how I can just get beyond this. And so I was thinking that I'd like to talk a little bit with you guys about, spirituality, death, God. I don't know. I mean, so I'm going to start off with you, Charles. I feel like it's not fair. That good people, so many good people I know are dying, in my opinion, too early, and it is just not right. And you're taught to do good, and you do the right things and nobody's perfect, but it seems like so many what I call decent people that are trying to do good things have untimely deaths, and be it by accidents or health or what have you, and it's just seems like it's not fair. I mean, do any of you want to talk about this? I mean, I'd like to mention before we get into our real topics of DeSantis and everything else, but it just seems like life is tough sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I question faith and God, and I question if there's a God, and I question, the traditional God. This lady was saying, she was a big believer in traditional God and Christ and Jesus and all that, and her son was taken away, and she says, I don't know. Sort of the kind of questions I was having. How do you make it all make sense? Do you have an idea, or would you have a...
Well, I think, first of all, it's quite all right that you feel the way you do. That's the way you feel. And then you have to decide what you're going to do with what you confront. And whatever you decide is okay.
I don't know, Charles, because the truth is that, we always can act up and have this wonderful front, but inside your heart is just broken. And you see good people who don't do the fascist thing of playing others against each other, good people who spend their life trying to help others, and they're taken away, in my opinion, unjustly, unfairly.
Well, and that's the way you feel about it. That does not make that the case. And when it comes to matters of life and death, there are a lot of questions around it. There are a lot of things we can't answer. So we can draw our own conclusions, but it does not mean that our conclusions are correct. I think also when you talk about good people, he obviously did some good things. He impacted your life.
Yes.
And we can look at, say, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. I consider him to have been a great, good man, a compassionate human being who was taken away from us.
Yes.
But in a sense, I think in death, he's larger than he was in life.
But isn't that because he's an iconic human being that there's only one of those a generation?
But I think it does not matter whether it's an iconic individual or it's someone local. In death, they can be larger than life. It doesn't have to be some international or national figure like Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King Jr. or whoever.
Yeah, I was talking to his son today, and I tried to tell him, I said, you were blessed to have such a great dad and know him, but it's still, I think there's so many people that lose out and not getting to meet him or speak with him or partake with him. And, he's the kind of guy that brings everybody together. It didn't matter your race. It didn't matter, he's just a beautiful human being.
I'm going to say something that you feel free to disagree with. I believe we all come here with an agenda.
Okay.
And that agenda is larger than our bodies. I don't believe we're just physical entities. I believe we're larger than that. And we don't always have the right read on what someone's agenda is.
What do you mean?
What I mean by that is what we call an untimely death may have been that soul's decision to leave at that juncture for reasons we may not understand right now. Some things unfold in time. We may not understand everything at once.
But, the traditional American or United States type religion, the majority is Christian of some sort, some denomination. They believe in a higher power and Jesus and Christ and so forth and so on. I mean, I'm trying to understand where you're going with this. Do you believe that there's a traditional God that's taking care of everything or looking down on us and all that? Or
No, I do not. I don't embrace the framework of some amorphous being somewhere intervening in our lives and making decisions for us. I believe that we have a great deal of autonomy and we are creative beings. And I believe we're larger than our bodies. And I believe we came here for specific reasons. And I don't think most human beings are living
here
there.
From where?
I call it the absolute realm. There's a realm from whence we came. This is the realm of relativity. Everything here is relative. It's a realm where there are contextual fields. There is light and darkness. There is in and out and in between. There is up and down. There is above.
Well, that would be heaven, would it not, or something like that in traditional Christianity?
What I'm saying is that we live in physicality. We're in physicality, and we're here for a reason. I believe we are divine beings who came here in order to decide, declare, and demonstrate our divinity. That's why we're here.
But if I'm born and then I die, where do I go?
You go back to that realm. There's nowhere else to go. That is where I think traditional religion is in error.
But they will say that you have to be a Christian to be saved. You have to be, born again? You have to believe that Jesus Christ is the Savior, et cetera. I mean, you're a preacher.
I don't believe that. I do not believe that there is one religious orientation that's above another. I believe each soul walks its own path. And I believe those who embrace tradition, I honor and I respect that. I don't necessarily embrace a lot of the things that what we might consider a traditional religious person embraces, but that works for them. But I do ultimately believe that all of us go back to that realm from whence we came. And another way of saying that is I believe all paths lead home. There's nowhere else to go. We all go home.
So am I going to see my parents when I die?
I believe you will see them.
But like this, in a sense, or not?
I don't know what they'll be dressed like, but I believe you'll recognize them.
Really?
I believe that. Because science tells us energy is neither created nor destroyed.
So you're saying we're energy. It takes on
different forms. We are energy. That is a scientific fact. We are bundles of energy.
So when my body stops functioning, it's just a body. It's gone. It's nothing.
Microorganisms eat it up. They take it and consume it.
So what the Christian religions would call the soul, is that what you're talking about? Is energy?
We could say the soul. I don't know that I would talk about the soul within the traditional religious context as being some entity inside of us. I believe scientists have seen something they call an aura around human beings. It's an energy field.
But Charles, I've seen you at the pulpit.
Yes.
I've seen you lead a congregation.
Okay.
Singing and praising the gospel and the Lord and everything else. I mean, you're a learned individual in that respect. And you have changed your views?
I've changed my views. Is it wrong or is it problematic that a person can have an enlarged view or have a different view?
My thing is that my parents taught me to think, to analyze, and to study and make decisions that make sense, to use my brain.
Okay.
But then they gave me faith, and they said, well, you have to believe this. And I said, why? What is the evidence that there is a God, that there is a Jesus Christ, like they say, et cetera? And there's no evidence, scientific or fact, then I have to have faith. You have to believe. And I said, you teach me to use my brain, but then you want me to shut it off.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because a part of the reason a lot of the traditional frameworks don't work is because they don't make sense.
It's not logical to me.
They don't make sense because you have within those frameworks these ideas about some super autonomous, not autonomous, but some amorphous being that created us and then was disappointed and is temperamental and gets angry and jealous and is going to send us perhaps to some eternal place of torture. To any thinking person, to any logical mind, that is absolutely absurd.
This weekend, my daughter was performing at the Metrocon, I think, in Tampa, the big Comic-Con thing, and she had a role in a couple shows. And when we were leaving the place, there were all these alleged Christians with the big signs and screaming at and yelling and telling all these people who are dressed in these outfits that they're going to hell, and and they're portraying themselves to be good Christians by basically not physically attacking but verbally attacking people. I remember once at Fantasy Fest years ago, my partner and I, we were out there on the street, and these alleged Christians would say, I pray you would get cancer. I mean, they were saying things like that, and I thought, it's not a very Christian thing. I don't know, maybe. I mean, have you ever seen people who do this?
It may very well be a Christian thing, but it is not Christ-like, and it is not, in terms of what I understand the teachings of Jesus to be, a man who taught to love your neighbor as yourself.
But didn't you say God was a violent God?
I didn't say that. I said that is what traditional religion says, and the Bible does say that. And scholarly work reveals that when it comes to the Bible, it is a book that is riddled with contradictions and inconsistencies. And we don't have any of the original documents for it anyway.
Right, I think
we
it was
don't even
300
have the
some
copy
years after
of the copies.
300 or so years after the death of Christ did Constantine bring everybody
even
together.
Jesus never talked about hell. Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. Yeah. The Jews have no concept for hell or the devil. He taught using a word called Gehenna, which was a valley outside Jerusalem where the carcasses of dead animals were thrown, because the Jews believed that when you die, that's it. And they believed that to get a burial that is not respectful was the worst thing that could happen to you. So Jesus talked about bodies being cast into Gehenna. Well, English scribes saw that word, didn't understand it, threw it out and replaced it with the word Hades, which is where we get this concept of eternal torture from.
The devil.
And the devil. The Jewish religion did not teach that. Right. Jesus did not teach that. But we don't have any of the original documents. And this Bible that we have, and when we talk about the Gospels in particular,
right,
they were circulated anonymously, because they were written 50 to 60 years.
I was told that in like 1945, they found all these lost Gospels, like Gospel of Peter and Mary and others. And under Constantine, they decided they were going to create the church, and they picked the Gospels that made sense to make the church powerful. I think Constantine wanted to be a Holy Roman Emperor.
There were several councils.
And they picked certain ones and eliminated others.
That council that met the Nicene Creed and all those kinds of things. There were several councils that met, and they included books and took books out and put books back in.
But isn't religion important to society, Charles? I mean, in the sense that, you're saying you believe in this energy thing. Don't we need religion to keep people from
I didn't say I believe in an energy thing. I said I don't embrace a lot of the traditional frameworks around the source of our existence. I'm saying this, that religion is a great thing, but religion that we have inherited from our ancestors, who knew less about the world and the universe than we do, is limited in its perspectives.
Yeah, I think I know. I've talked to some fundamentalists, and they'll say the Catholics are not Christians, and for a few reasons. One, that they're baptized as babies, and you have to actually profess your faith in Christ. They'll say, well, they idolize statues, and I say, well, the reason the Catholics created the statues, like the Apostle Peter has the keys, because he always had the keys to the church, and people didn't read and write. So when they saw, each apostle with a different item, they knew who it was, and they could tell the story of Christ through the statues, because nobody could read and write. And it's just fascinating to see the different religious sects, say within Christianity.
And that's within Christianity alone. There are 4,200 religions in the world, and each of them claims some ascendant, some special knowledge or understanding that's better than the other.
So what is it in your mind that we have in common? And I want to have you guys talk about this too, because I mean this is out of the blue, this subject. We're supposed to talk to scientists and everything, but I'm telling you, I've been really down recently about all this. I mean, seeing really great, good human beings lose their life, and in my opinion, that's totally unfair, unjust, and wrong. I mean, if I was God and a good, I want to have these people around being a great example to everybody else, and then I feel like what I have around me, maybe not so good people. Not meaning.
I don't, and in my belief system, I don't believe we're minions, and it's not God's function to do things for us, because the source of our existence has equipped us with the things we need.
Yeah, I did that with Unidos now, and I started the term that I always use is oración. In Spanish, it means prayer, but it really means oración con acción, prayer with action. So I was at churches, and that's why I founded Unidos, and they were all praying. I don't care if they're Catholic or Protestant or whatever denomination. They're praying to Jesus for this. I'm praying for my grades. I'm praying to feel better. And I thought, and they're praying for, and particularly that day, they were praying for immigration reform. And I thought, what a waste of time. Pray to God for the strength for you to make the change, for you to make the money, for you to pass this test or whatever the heck you're praying for. And I just could never understand why alleged people of God, meaning preachers, priests, are always, telling people to pray for them, in a selfish way, rather than saying, ask for the strength for you to change your world.
Well, prayer is an energy. It is a collective energy when people come together that does have positive capability.
I'm going to tell you, when I go to African American church, I come out feeling like I'm with God.
That's great. Let me say this, though, that the cycle is complete when thought becomes word, becomes action. It's a threefold thing. It's not just thought, but word and action. So what you did with Unidos Now was said, okay, we prayed, we put the energy up, and then we take that thought that led to that prayer and we give that energy behavior and action. It's a threefold process.
My problem was, how do I get people who claim to be of faith, that believe that their destiny is controlled by a powerful being that I can't see, to actually get off their butt and control their own destiny? I mean, you made it that we have feet, hands, mouth, brain to use, and maybe we have more control, or we have control over our life, where a lot of people believe, I'm going to let God decide and take me along my journey of life.
And you can't force them not to believe that. But what you
they usually fail or not do nothing in their life.
What you can do is live your life in such a way. I believe Gandhi was right when he said, be the change you seek in the world. And by example, you impact the lives of others.
Cesar, I want to ask you, because I know your dad's a preacher. I know, a matter of fact, I think you're an ordained minister. I don't know how, but I think you've preached at churches, in Latin churches, Hispanic churches.
Yeah.
A la gente, a la raza.
Most of the Latino pastors in the area have seen me grow up, and most of them still see. I run into some of them sometimes. They're like, "Hey, hermano CJ," and I'm like, "Cool,
so
I'm not hermano CJ anymore."
What is it that I mean? We're talking about all this, and I've been really struggling this last few days with trying to understand why so many good people I'm close to that I know are dying, or at least seems like they are to me. Somebody's always passing, and a lot of good people are passing.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
One of them is the spirituality aspect of it. Charles talks about how we're all one energy, how one decision you make affects everybody, not just those around you, but he was talking about the ripple effect, sort of how, something I do here is going to affect somebody that I may not have ever seen.
Yeah, he always talks we're interconnected, right?
That's it. But, and then you're talking about the subject of death and, untimely deaths, and then it goes back to semantics. What is fair? What is not fair? What is good? What is not good? And Charles touched on something slightly about maybe that person in that time when they chose to leave, whether or not it was a choice, that's up in the air for me. But I do believe that things happen the way they should. Whether or not the people that survive, whether or not we believe that, I think, that's based on interpretation or how you feel at the moment. Because though I can say that about somebody that I may be completely separated from, and my words of consolation would be, it's okay, things happen. This is life, things happen how they should. But then when it hits closer to home, I'm like, this is bullshit. So we tend, even in our own consolation, sometimes we fuck ourselves up in that sense, where we will say something to someone else who's also in the same position that one day we are or have been. And when we're in that position, we're like, that's bullshit. I don't believe it.
My gig is that I'm, as an attorney, and I deal with a lot of negative things. It's not. This young lady was waitress, said she was studying to be a lawyer or something. I said, "Oh, good for you. I guess make sure that's what you want to do, because it's, in my experience, it's not like a happy job.
It's heavy,
and it's a lot of stress. And there's
you deal with people and you deal with their problems
all the time. Yeah,
the good, the bad, the ugly. And most of it is bad and ugly, especially in your line of work.
Yeah, if you're doing criminal work
defense,
or
PI,
for
whatever.
personal injury, if you're dealing with people's deaths.
Well, I know a lot of, I have, friends that, they practice family law, and they're like, I can't do this shit anymore because it's, people fight over a DVD, and then they'll go to war over something. They'll pay more to the attorneys over something simple because of the passion that they have.
Well, I could never. Another topic would be, I could never understand how you love somebody so much that then you hate them so grossly.
Well, I think those are two. I mean, we were talking about opposites a little earlier, or relative terms, and I think love and hate are very similar. I think those are two things that when you're so passionate about something or someone, you feel that way. So you can love greatly and you can hate at the same time. I mean, it's just like, I'm sure Nancy sometimes wants to choke me, but I know she loves me. It's just, it's a passion thing for me. But when you're talking about the religious aspect of it, at a very young age, I was 16 years old, I knew what I could say, how to say it to make a grown man cry, and I loved it.
The power.
I'm an egoist. I'm fucking narcissist.
You are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that.
But I knew how to say it in a way where I would bring down the house. Like you say, you sometimes you feel that. I could on command.
There was nobody better than Charles.
And I never saw the Reverend.
You have no idea.
But I could watch, like right now, it's funny, my mom, because several people recently in my circle of influence have said, because my dad's ready to retire. So my mom brought it up. She's like, you need to change already so you can take over the church. Because when I was there before I went off and became my own person, it was packed. There was always a packed house. Everybody wanted to see me preach. And what was I going to talk about? And I would always come up with some stuff. And I studied the Bible and I studied the Quran and I studied. I like studying, and I studied also the Catholic version of it that has books that the Protestant King James version doesn't have, because I was very curious. I was always I was brought up the same way. Oh, they idolize people, so Catholics are bad. I'm like, well, they seem to have more fun than we do, And then so it was all for me growing up. It was a different experience, but because I chose to open up my mind to other things, I couldn't just stick with the one.
Right now, like Charles, I've seen him. I don't know how many years I've known Charles, but I remember him over 20 years. I remember him preaching, and I've come away from his service in a church feeling uplifted, and I'm not a believer. I'm not that. I'm not a believer, but I felt there was a God or a feeling coming through me, and I hate to say this, I go to a lot of white churches, and man, I can't stay awake, and I feel like there's nothing in the church, and maybe it's the people together and music and the spirituality. I don't know. But
I think that stems from culture too. In the African American churches, very very similar to the Latino churches.
Or the Haitian.
The Haitian churches. A lot of these, especially where we come from a different culture, where like I know in Africa that they rely on audience participation. Let's call it that way. So the audience gets it's a tradition in the Latino churches too. When they say something, the expectation is someone agrees with you, and so it's almost like an interaction back and forth, which really brings everything together. So it's just a different way of doing it.
I want to ask you, because you're. Mr. Bolillo, I shouldn't say that, but it's a term that a lot of Mexicans use to say a white guy, which is really translated means white bread, isn't it? Bolillo. So from your perspective, you were raised differently than I think most people in this room. How were you raised in belief of God, or how do you view all these and what we're talking about, spirituality and so forth?
I was raised Presbyterian and went to a white church. It's kind of like how you say it wasn't super exciting. While we're talking about death, recently my brother had a near-death experience. He's one of the best people I know. I think that what happened to him, and he's injured from it.
He's still messed up, right?
Yeah.
Did he have a brain injury too, or no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did.
He's mostly recovered, but
he should have passed, shouldn't he have?
He probably should have died, yeah. And
I remember you flew out there.
Yeah, he was in the hospital for some 3 months or so. And he broke his spine, had brain surgery. So I know you started off the conversation saying you feel like there's a lot of injustice. I agree. I think a lot of horrible people end up in positions of power and for too long, and they hurt people who don't deserve it.
For a Christian nation, shouldn't we be more loving and caring about our neighbors and our people instead of like these policies we see with DeSantis and the immigration laws and
you would think so.
People?
I'm seeing a lot of issues with Christianity in this country. The way that it's preached, it's just, to me, it seems that...
Or is it all religion?
I don't know if it's all religion. I think it's certain sects of every religion, I'll say. So certain people in any given religion, I think, are less likely to improve real world conditions because they believe that there's an afterlife. I think they view this world as kind of a trial, and they're causing harm or being harmed is just temporary in nature in their mind, and there's just a chilling effect on making things better.
Can I comment on that real quick?
For sure.
But I'm talking from the poor people side. As we got older and as we get older and my kids grow up and my niece grows up and all the siblings we get together, we grew up in a very strict house. I wore jeans until I was 18. That was the first time I wore shorts, because you were not allowed to wear shorts because something about showing too much skin for men.
You're religious.
Yes. My sisters wore skirts until they left the house. They never once wore jeans or shorts or anything else. They never once cut their hair until they were old enough to go to the salon.
And more fundamental type church?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't celebrate Christmas, Halloween, any major holidays. We were not allowed to participate in school. We were always the kids that when it was like a Valentine's Day or Christmas Day, we would have to go to a different room because our parents requested it. We were different. Always. As I've grown older, as my parents have realized that they have no locus of control, especially over me. They still have a little bit more influence on my siblings, but I'm just a loose cannon. They've come to terms that they cannot force us to believe or think a certain way.
That explains a lot about you.
There's a lot about me people don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed is all of a sudden birthdays are more lenient. They took my son out for his first birthday, which to us, like all the siblings,
Shocked.
we were like, what the fuck? Ma and Pa, and my mom even helped sing happy. I'm like, what the fuck? Never in my life. If you would have told me when I was 16 years old that one day I was gonna see my mom sing happy birthday, I would have said, the devil, you are fucking full of shit. Hell will freeze over the day that happens.
But why
But I'll tell you why I said it
guy?
from the poor people's side. I'll tell you why. We had this discussion one time, drunkenly with my sisters, and but I still remember this. When we were growing up, my dad did everything he could just to keep the lights on. There were times where we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water. It was rough. Even in the U.S., which I still think we grew up rich compared to other parts of the world, but that's another discussion. But we were in the struggle, like they say, and so doesn't it make sense to believe in something where you don't have to spend money? You don't have to celebrate Christmas. You don't have to celebrate Valentine's. Because you don't have the money to fucking buy shit anyways.
I'm sure that wasn't the reason.
No. Actually, now it makes more sense. We were having this discussion. We're like, wow, now my dad has, a
maybe
little
he's
money.
Grown up, or maybe he's thinking,
matured. But I think economics was a big part of that. Because what's the difference? My dad was never a beggar. We were never on food stamps. One time, my mom, I remember she said that someone had offered her all that.
Let's say you're okay.
I think you're basically saying that it just gives people happiness for free.
Well, you said something. Well, this promise of an afterlife. It's the same thing. When my dad preached, he swore up and down that when we were to leave this earth, no matter how poor you are, you will have riches beyond measure, and you're going to be up there with the elites and God at his right hand and everything. So it's this promise of something better. But, now as I'm older, it's like, well, what the fuck about me now? I'm here today. I don't want to fucking suffer my whole life. What about
so you
the
can have
today?
riches there?
Yeah, exactly. Why am I waiting? What's this lease
Charles,
that
what do
we're
you gotta
talking
say?
about? So that's why,
I think this is one of the problems with traditional religion. And much of the framework of our beliefs was given to us by our primitive ancestors, as I stated earlier, who knew less about the world and less about life in the universe than we do.
Yeah, I think
you
about
also
it. There's
stated
no
earlier that you respect people who honor tradition.
Let me finish.
So how far does that go?
Let me finish. Religion does have value, and religion has played a positive role, but it has also been a two-edged sword. On the one hand, it has given some healing, but it cuts at the same time and wounds, because belief precipitates behavior. Human beings in our infantile state, in terms of our evolution, do things that are based on erroneous presumptions in this respect. We are forever looking for some savior, some strong man, some Messiah, when we have met the enemy and it is us. We have also met the Savior and it is us. People use the energy in different ways,
Right.
depending on their mindset, according to their framework, as he mentioned earlier, and he also added to, people do things based on what they believe. If they believe, oh, I'm just doing this, is just temporary, it's all going to be better in the end, we behave accordingly. I think that is a problem because we have not used the creative energy we can to do that which works for us. It's not a matter of what's right and wrong. It's a matter of what works for us as a species. What is beneficial to all of us because we're all connected. I believe we're connected not only to each other, but everything in existence. And what one does affects another. The effect may not be immediate. The effect may not be large, but there's an impact because if we're connected.
Yeah, Cesar had said earlier something before the show about, no, I just work in my world. And then you were mentioning something about that everything we do is connected, and even purchasing clothes or in Bangladesh, right? It affects everything. The
But I believe
pollution
it's
here
beyond
over
that.
there. It's beyond that.
It's beyond
just
the physical realm.
connection.
It's not just the physical connectivity.
Okay.
I think at a higher level we're connected. And I said earlier,
So we're all from the same energy source?
We're all from the same energy source. I believe that the causal primary force of our existence has individuated itself in a gazillion different forms, and it's all one. Whether there's a universe or a multiverse, there is a primal
Charles,
cause
let me ask
for
you.
that.
Let's say you were going to talk to this young man whose father just passed.
Mm-hmm.
This beautiful man his father was, and the kid seems pretty cool too. What would you tell him? I mean, what would you say if you were asked that or given an opportunity to speak, say, at his funeral? Or
First of all, you have to assess the moment. Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing. Just be there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just be there. You don't have to say anything. But if circumstances permit, or if I'm called upon to say something, I had to perform a funeral for a young man who took his life a few years ago in Sarasota. The parents said, we love you, we respect you, we want you to do the funeral. And I had to search myself because at that time I believed this heaven or hell thing. I believed that if he died without accepting Jesus as his Savior, he was doomed to hell. I celebrate the fact that I no longer embrace that absurdity. But what I did was I went to the funeral and I performed it and I said, celebrate the beauty of that life. The things that he did, that you remember, that touched you, this beautiful human being. Celebrate the times, the good times, the experiences you had together. That was the whole motif of my message to them. At the end, they thanked me. They said, because Charles, we actually didn't know how you were going to pull it off, but we had faith, we believed in you. And they said you did such a beautiful job with our son.
I've been dealing also with the death of my wife's brother. And this yesterday was the culmination of years of dealing with this death of a son to a mother and father. And, if you think about it, there's a word for death. If you lose your spouse, you become a widower, if you lose your parent, you're an orphan. But there's no word for when you lose your child. I just can't think of anything more destructive. And as I sit here now, just a few minutes before we went on, I spoke to my wife, and she was crying about, her mother. Her mother's, the kid was old, he was 50, but she's devastated. And then when I think of these beautiful people that lost their son that just become an engineer, untimely. I just don't know how a parent deals with
As
that.
my parents get older, I think about having to bury them. I've never once thought about having to bury my kids.
Yeah, I mean, my parents passed and they were old, and I remember my dad a week before he passed. He goes, "I'm leaving." Basically, he said, "I got nothing." He was 101. He was an old guy. To me now, that's not that old. But he was an old guy, and all his friends and family had passed, except a couple of the kids and a couple of grandkids. But his wife and his ex-wives and his all the kids and friends in high school were all gone. And he goes, I feel alone. And I said, "Dad, you gotta meet new people." And and he goes, "No, he was tired, I guess is the best way." And I was mentioning that to you a little earlier, and you said,
And it's all right that your father felt that way. There's nothing wrong with that.
Why do you say that?
Because that was the way he felt, and there's no right or wrong of it. That was where he was.
I always believed, Charles, that I love the United States concept of freedom, which I see a lot of hypocrisy. People say they believe in freedom, but then they want to legislate whether you can have an abortion or the right of privacy, which means keep out of my body. Not that I support abortion. Or the fact that I may want to commit suicide or do drugs or whatever, and it's against the law to commit suicide. I don't get it. It's your body. I don't understand any of that.
Human beings, and I think it has to do with where we are on the evolutionary scale. We just have not evolved beyond certain things. We will castrate and incarcerate an individual, this is just one example, who will assist somebody who wants to transition out of this realm. And
so what do you mean? Somebody
mercy,
who would...
mercy killing, what we call mercy killing.
Okay, so somebody would help somebody pass.
Somebody would help. They said, "Look, I'm ready."
And we'll
to
put
go.
them in prison.
And we'll put them in prison. But we will sell products to each other that kill us slowly. So it becomes not a matter of dying, but how fast you die. It's okay if you kill yourself gradually, but it's not good if you take your life quickly. That is the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah. Well, I just don't know how do you bring back a mother after the death of their son or daughter back to be, if you will, normal. I don't know if you can be. You know what I mean?
I don't know if there's a fix to that per se, or if that's even the correct word. I think everybody deals with loss different. When I talk to Pops, Ron's dad,
the gentleman that passed.
Yeah, and I called him and I said, "Brother Jumps, we were talking, and then his grandson called, and they were worried because when stuff like this happens, the sharks come out." And I told him, I said,
the sharks come out.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
People were interested in estates and money and all kinds of stuff, and they were already, wills and trusts and worldly things and possessions. And he was worried about that, and I said, "Look, man, I'm just telling you from personal experience. People grieve differently. People will, and then there are just some people who are just
my experience is the ones that make the big show are the ones that have been the worst to the dead person.
You said
deceased.
something. You said something earlier that reminded me of a story. It's like an abusive relationship that we have with life. We wake up one day, we hate it, and then the next moment we love it, and then we regret something, and then we don't. I think we are at the end of the day in control of our destiny. Whether or not someone did something to affect me, I get to choose how it affects me, and everybody chooses.
I completely agree with that.
Well, I just think from personal experience, I spend a lot of time sometimes in my past blaming other people, but I'm also a culprit for doing dumb shit.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not someone wronged me or not wasn't the matter of fact. It's what I did,
what you did,
or how I
it.
reacted
Yes.
to it, that got my own set of issues. That
so you're
to
saying
it.
You shouldn't blame
your
parents or others for the way the behavior.
And I think I
you've
said this a few episodes ago. It comes to the point. We were talking about generational trauma and how that's something that I do believe it exists, but it gets to the point you're a grown ass young person, whether you're whatever you decide you want to be, grow the fuck up and get over it. Sometimes we can't live our entire lives.
Or say life is about crashing.
Look, I mean,
right? And then you get up and you move on.
You either, or you don't, or you hang up you don't get back on the bike, you don't get back in the car, but you
own it.
But you can't stay on the ground. Might as well just die. You got to do something.
Yes, because I believe life is not a process of discovery. It's a process of creation.
Hold it. It's not discovery?
It's not discovering. It's creating.
What do you mean?
It is, like he said, what you do with it. Life presents itself.
Is there a destiny? Do we have a destiny and we're just following our destiny?
We don't have a set destiny, no.
No.
We create
the destiny.
Our experience. We create our own template for living in this world. Each soul walks its own path. The destiny is an ever-evolving process. Destiny is evolution. It's ongoing. We're evolving.
As individuals.
As individuals and collectively.
Clayman, you want to add to this at all? Or?
I mean, I think we do have destiny, personally.
What do you mean?
I think the universe is deterministic. Like, every atom smashes into every other atom, and it has a predetermined cause and effect, if you will, or it's just determined by the conditions at the beginning or before the beginning of the universe. I take issue with thinking that we are divine and here for a reason. I don't take issue so much with thinking that everything is connected, but if you kind of label it as we all, as in like humans, are all one, then I start to take some issue with it.
Why?
If you believe that you have divine purpose, then whatever you do is either good or the goodness of your actions is entirely irrelevant. You just have divine purpose. What you do just is. You don't have to consider whether or not you're hurting someone else. That's pretty much it. Yeah,
well, that's contradictory.
If you think that you're divine and you have your own reason.
What he just stated is contradictory.
In what way?
In this sense, if you believe that we're all connected and we're all one, then you also understand that the decisions you make are going to impact others.
Right, but you could think to yourself, my divine purpose is to control the government for the sake of other people. And then you implement, let's say, a death penalty. So you, for the sake of other people, but you're hurting individuals with that death penalty for the sake of other individuals. Again, not you.
I agree. But that still does not negate the fact that as we evolve, we also begin to become awakened to the fact that that was not a decision in our best interest.
Well, who's we? I mean, like,
collectively as human beings.
You could say, like, as human beings today, we might, on average, view the death penalty less favorably than human beings collectively did 50 years ago.
I'll give you this example. I haven't researched that one, but I can say this. There was a time in this country where we felt that we should burn people at the stake.
The witches.
We don't do that anymore because we've evolved beyond
Doesn't
it.
mean people still don't believe it. It just as a collective whole, we don't do that
collectively
anymore.
As a society, most people would not embrace that.
I think when you talk about we're connected, I don't think, I'm thinking in this, we come from energy and then we go to energy and we come back, but I don't know about how planned it is or anything. You know what I'm trying to say? I
don't believe there's a void or anything.
Well,
I think once you cease to exist, it. That's the story.
But you know what I learned from all this? And if I can tie it back to our country. Our nation was unique of separation of church and state for a purpose. I mean, there's a Vegas pastor when Trump was there. It was in all of the news, and he's just going on loving Trump. And we don't tax churches. They shouldn't, in my opinion, be politically involved in any way.
They're not supposed to be.
Well, I just think that if you're going to be political, you need to pay your taxes. But the idea is not to have government influence people's beliefs or to have the religion necessarily directly influence, in my opinion, everybody else. So if we're a nation made up from people from all over the world, every religion's here probably, and yet we need to learn to respect everybody's opinion. And just this discussion, I mean, we all agree and disagree,
which is perfectly fine.
Exactly, because we live in a place that should allow us to be able to do that. And one of my concerns from fascism, and I was just listening to the Islamic countries and what they do to women and people. If you don't believe this, that if you say something bad against Allah, my gosh, they will execute you. You know what I mean?
So the question becomes not how bad is the fascism, how destructive and how prominent, but what do we do in respect to that? When Hitler arose in Germany, and we don't have to go into all the details about how the Catholic Church helped that process, and how the religious institution in Germany went along with that, and how others turned their back to the slaughtering of humans, millions of people. Human beings all over the planet got together and decided, this Third Reich is not us. This is not us as a species.
You think so?
And defeated. He was defeated.
Yeah, but is it? I'm just curious if it's because of the policies of the fascist ideology, or because
I believe
they were grabbing too much land and territory.
I'm not saying that.
I think the more they went like Russia invades Ukraine. You can't do that.
I do not.
Because he went into France.
I do not doubt that there were elements of that.
There's a lot of geopolitical.
But I believe
yes,
that a lot of it had to do with ideological framework, that this is not who we are and this is not what we want in our world.
Is it
same thing in Japan?
I don't know.
Hope you're right.
Let me finish.
The history of everything is all I learned is war.
But I
and
think
torture.
some leaders would buy that. Some progressive leaders, but not all.
No.
I think a part of the problem with us as a species is this. We've been sold, and I'm going to use this word, we've been sold through our philosophies and theologies a bag of shit. We believe that our primal nature is evil or sinful or off or erroneous, and we tend to believe the worst about us before we believe the best. That is problematic. I believe...
Well, who believes that? You say we believe that. Do you mean
I say most human beings embrace that.
So I'd say that's religion. Most religions are putting forward that idea.
We are impacted by theology and religion, whether we embrace it or not.
True that. We have all been brainwashed.
It is an overarching branch that affects us all.
Absolutely.
Whether you embrace religion or embrace the theologies or not, they impact our behavior and our belief system.
I have to deal with the fundamentalist right-wing freaks all the time.
What I'm saying is that the template must shift. Human beings are self-denigrating. We believe the worst about us, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even the things I've heard around this table, evil people, bad stuff. I am not suggesting that people don't use the energy in destructive ways. But as long as we believe that we're basically evil or sinful or wrong, and we've been impacted by that, and we behave accordingly, we're going to keep repeating the same mistakes
I always
over and over
used to
again.
get a kick of the Christians that said, the devil made me do it. Have you ever heard this? I'm into pornography. That's bad because you're gay
cheated
because
on my wife. The devil made me do it.
Have you heard that? Oh my God, I've heard that so many, and I think
I think a lot of it is the old us against them template too.
Okay,
it's them.
Yes, otherisms.
It is the other that's bad.
And they made me do it.
It's the other that's evil. No, we point the finger at the other.
It goes back to what I said. At some point, you got to stop blaming. You control the outcome.
Right. You not only that, but we've got to own all of it. Until we own all of it, we can't change any of it. As long as we say that's him doing that, her doing that,
those are gays.
Them doing that.
Those are.
If the roles were reversed.
What do you mean?
If the roles were reversed, if, let's say it was the other way around, the political structure in this country.
What do you mean the other way around?
Let's say we're the ones in power and not the people that are there. Would we think the way they do? Would we feel the way they do?
Well, I believe, but here's the problem.
I mean,
here's my problem with this. Just when I was talking to Andrew Yang and Jolly that one day a couple months ago in Tampa about the political system, we always said, and I think it was Cheney that came out and said, we are just electing fools. No. You can elect a good person to office, but if they're going to stay there, they're going to have to change and play the game the way it's designed.
Because the way the politics
or they
is
won't
played.
be elected again. The system changes you or makes you or recruits people who, in my opinion, act in a more evil way or a selfish way rather to get reelected rather than do what's right. So unless you change the system, you can change the players, the players in the game, but the same result will always happen.
The same result will happen as long as our belief systems are the way they are. It's beyond politics. It's beyond
About
sociological
money.
frameworks. It's beyond money. It is what we as human beings believe.
So what do we do? I mean, we're totally off topic today.
No, I think we're on topic.
And you know, I was trying to start the show uplifting, and then I just come crashing down to the reality that I've been in, disturbed by, best way I can call evilness in our political system. You know, we have one of the lowest. You know, DeSantis was we have one of the lowest minimum wages, and he did everything to stop it from going up. You know, we have one of the 48th and 50 states in spending on education. You know, one of the worst schools system. We spend nothing.
Then they redid it for the voucher system.
Healthcare, school funding, long-term elder care, on and on and on. The corporations pay very small taxes here. We fund our government by the kind of tax system that impacts or takes money from poor people or lower income people. You know, so we don't have a system that really values Christian Jesus ideology.
Yeah, and I think it's beyond Christian. And Henry David Thoreau said this: there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, to one digging at the root. And I use the evil term because he used it there. There are root causes of the way human beings behave, and until we address those, we're hacking at branches. It's not politics. It's not even economics. Yes, those are immediate concerns, but larger than that is the way we view each other. If we truly believed that we are connected, and that we're connected not only to each other, but to everything in existence, we would treat each other differently. We would treat the environment differently.
But do you realize that Florida is 16th from the bottom in healthcare? The states that are the worst in healthcare are the southern states, Republican-controlled states.
I'm familiar with all of that.
We don't take care of our people.
Those are the branches. Those are the outcomes of ideological frameworks of what people believe. And a lot of it stems back to traditional religion.
Because they believe you got to help yourself.
Yeah, but why?
I'm not here to help you, even though they're going to go and ask for your money to run for elections.
Cancer, death, diabetes, fatal overdoses, teen birth rates, and infant mortality are way below the blue states in our nation.
All of those are outcomes from the way people believe
we refuse in our state to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. We don't take care of our citizens that need the most.
And the list goes on, and those are problems. No one is dismissing that. But the problem has an overarching theme. This notion that what I do does not impact the other. I do believe that what goes around comes around. I do believe that what we put out comes back to us.
Do you know that you're a teacher?
Yes.
We're the 49th in pay for teachers.
I've been familiar with that.
We don't care in Florida.
Listen. And
they're not. I agree. One connects to the other, but we're not connecting.
And it does have to do. No, it's not because we're not connected. It's because we don't believe we are. We don't believe we're connected. We give it lip service, but we really don't believe it. Because on the one hand, we'll say, I believe we're all connected. And then we'll point the finger and say, but it's them. Them is us.
So I'm doing the same thing.
We're all doing it. Them is us.
So that's another thing that I take issue with.
Okay,
I guess
talk to
just
me.
with this ideology generally is if you think everyone is connected and essentially the same person,
No,
then
that is not. There's a difference between being connected and being the same. We're all connected, but we're not all the same. That is not what I said.
you did say that you
I
think
did not
things
say we're
come
all
back
the same.
around to
No,
you.
that is a law of the universe. That what goes out comes back because
It's
life
not
is
a law of the
circular.
universe.
It is a law of the universe.
You believe it's not. He believes it is.
He can
Keep going.
believe
Right, but
that. He
but
can
a
believe
law
that.
is something
But
that's
he's
proven.
contradicting
Saying it's a law,
himself
it
by
isn't.
saying he believes we're one, and then comes back and says it's
Well,
them.
I
that are
look
the
at it
problem.
when you say
that's
you're
contradictory.
When I hear you say we're connected, just whatever I do,
It doesn't mean we're the
affects-
same.
It affects other people in the world.
Look at my hand. My fingers are connected, but they're not all the same.
Fair enough.
There's a difference between sameness and oneness.
Okay.
And
I'll
I
buy
do
that.
not embrace DeSantis and what he does, and I don't excuse it. But I can't curse the darkness. I have to decide what will I do in reference to that.
So you pick the path that if we have, I've always said, and I don't know why I say these things or I believe these things, but I tell young people, I said, what are you here to do on this earth? I can't tell you what you should be doing.
And
but
that's correct.
And you shouldn't be just like, I'm making money, I'm eating, I'm having sex, that's not what I'm talking about. I said, what are you really do? What are you going to contribute to society or the world? What are you going to do? Are you going to, a teacher, you're going to help and inspire young people to be great human beings? What are each of us here to do?
And what you're touching on is a word that some around the table disagree with. You are essentially saying, what is your divine purpose for being here?
Divine purpose? Really?
Yes, they have problems with the word divine. You can say, what is your purpose for being here? If
Yes.
you don't like the word divine.
Yes.
And I can understand why some people would reject that because it's attached to some traditional notions
we start out
that
with
they
this.
may not embrace.
Let me ask then.
If there's no destination, so that's where I
Okay,
I-
destination-
why do
if
these
there's
people
no
that
destination? So then there can be no purpose.
why
So
why
where
these
am I
people
going?
that I
No, that's
respect?
not
No,
true.
I'm not saying that that's what I believe. I'm just saying based on what I've heard is there's no destination. I don't agree with that. I think there is a destination, and that is death.
No.
And what you do between birth and death is basically the journey that you
That's
took you
it.
there.
It is-
I don't think that death can be in any way,
I
shape,
hope
or
there's
form.
more than that because what's the point?
I mean, the point is to
if
enjoy
if that
life
works
as it
for him,
is.
well, if that works for him,
Enjoy life when you're
each,
alive.
Each soul works his own path.
Love hard, have a lot of sex, enjoy your kids.
No. You can do that anyway.
The Epicureans and the Stoics believe that. They believe, this is it, eat, drink, and be merry, because when you leave, it's over. I don't embrace that.
I always say I don't know.
And that's fair enough.
I don't know.
Because
I want to know why these good people die.
But see-
Is there a God or it's his time? God has taken him to heaven.
First of all, I don't believe in a place called heaven.
Well, he's taken his life.
Okay, and life is not taken. Life goes on. That form or expression comes to an end, but life does not cease.
Okay. I hope you're right.
And you can feel that way. I'm assured of it.
No, I hope you're right.
I'm
I don't
totally
know. I've killed cows
assured
and
of
goats
it.
before and eaten them, and that life is gone. I mean, it transfers energy,
That-
but that life is.
no.
but
But
that-
I
that
like the
goat
natives
is dead.
that would kill and then thank the animal.
Yes, because
for
they
the life
realize
because the life is
natives,
not.
those we call native
They provide
and
sustenance.
uncivilized
Are more civil.
had more understanding about the spiritual connectivity than we do.
That's fair.
They
Well,
understood that.
disagree.
They
All right,
under,
all
and
right.
you can. He can I think he
say-
just
No, he
disagrees.
can,
I'm
he can disagree.
I
It's
think
all right.
he can disagree, but I think sometimes we just disagree because we want to disagree.
No,
but go ahead.
no. I think he really believes it.
I'm a animal rights guy. I don't think that you can justify harm behind a veil of spirituality. So I don't like.
But you would say
That's not what I'm
I'm
saying.
not saying that. I'm not going to say that
No, he's talking to Cesar.
That's not what I'm saying.
Or me.
Right. I was speaking as far as
I said it. But I understand where he's coming because
what I was saying is that
I would say
they had a respect for that animal's life.
I want to hear what he has to say about this, and then because I know we're going way off topic, but I'm curious about your ideas of killing animals because you're vegan, aren't you?
I am. I think if you are able to farm and live off of farming, then you can't say that you respect an animal if you then choose to murder an animal.
You think it's murder when you kill an animal? Let's say chicken or beef?
I use the word murder because of the negative connotation. I mean, it depends on how you define it, but like legally it's not murder, but I use the word.
You think it's taken a life?
Yeah, I mean it is. So the difference between, let's say, animals and plants are that animals are sentient. They have a brain, a central nervous system. They perceive reality subjectively as an individual. They have an individual experience, and they can experience harm. So I think it's wrong to cause them harm when we don't have to.
But don't animals just... We don't want to get way off track today. We'll bring up this topic. But don't animals kill other animals to eat, to survive?
Yeah.
And is that okay?
Well, they have to do it. It's not so much a discussion of...
Don't we have to do it too sometimes? I mean,
if we have to do something to survive, then it's excusable. But what I'm saying is, if you can survive without causing this harm, and you forego that option, that's morally worse than choosing to not cause harm.
I can embrace that. But we have to be careful that we don't become morally relative and say, well, it's okay under this case, but it's not okay under that case, and then become dogmatic. Because we have to be willing to say, okay, to a certain degree, this is how I feel about that.
Well,
I just take issue with characterizing hunter-gatherers as respecting animals more so than people respect them today, like in a slaughterhouse. I think that there's virtually no respect when it comes to killing someone else.
Well, I think he's speaking from a perspective that's limited, because there were native groups in this part of the world that treated animals differently than the hunter-gatherers in Europe and maybe Africa and other parts of the world. And I think you have to have some knowledge of those native cultures and the way they related to animals before you would classify all of them as just hunter-gatherers and having disrespect for animals.
Well, not all, obviously, but generally speaking.
There were some native cultures that operated differently than hunter-gatherers. In fact, Europeans came here and went to Africa and found them doing things that they were not doing in Europe. So I think we have to be careful that we don't have just a Eurocentric framework when we talk about hunter-gatherers and primitive people.
I'm not sure what you mean by a Eurocentric framework. I wasn't referring to Europe. I was referring to North America. I was referring to Native Americans.
That is not the whole story of Native Americans.
It's part of
I'm
it.
not trying to say that it is the whole story.
But you generalized it in a way.
I'm saying that when we're talking about hunters, and I was talking about Native Americans, but if you're
it's larger than
Europe,
that.
Africa, Asia,
it's larger than
okay,
that.
Right,
it is.
All hunters.
All right, so we're running, guys. We're running out of time. But what I'll say is this: we have some interesting topics if we want to go down that road in the future. Normally, this was more a political thing, but I want to wrap this up with everybody making comments and discuss. And for me, I look. This was supposed to be a DeSantis topic, and it's turned into anything but, or maybe it hasn't because it maybe is relevant. But I just want to say that I'd like all of you to speak about life, your perceptions of whatever that comes to mind, and we'll conclude with those. Well, let's start with Clayman, if you're ready.
From a non-spiritual perspective, I think that you could characterize the universe as uncaring. The world pits animals against each other, either directly or by virtue of being in competition for resources. I don't think it's wrong or stretch to characterize existence within that structure as cruel, so the world is cruel. But we as individuals don't have to act that way. We don't have to reflect the cruelty of the world. We don't have to reflect the cruelty in nature. Just because a lion eats a gazelle doesn't mean we have to enslave a cow and murder them.
Fair enough. Charles?
Well, I think in reference to his statement, that is his framework. He sees the world as cruel. And as I stated earlier, that's a part of the problem. I believe that people use energy negatively, and they use it in ways that are not beneficial and in ways that are not the best for us as a species. But to judge it, that's putting a moral judgment on it. And I think that also comes back to us. I think the things we judge us. And that's a part of the problem. That is an old template. There's nothing new about that thought. That's how most people in the world think. That it's evil, it's wicked, I can't do anything about it. What difference does it make anyway? They're the problem. That is an old template that has caused our world.
And what is the correct template in your opinion?
I would say the correct template, but I think a new template that we should consider is that we are one, and that what we do affects each other, and that our individual existence impacts our collective existence. And I believe that what was called the golden rule, that we do the things to others that we want done to us, in the sense that we realize what we do is going to eventually affect us, because it is circular, because we are connected, not all the same, but we are all connected. And like the fingers on my hand, if something happens to one of them, the entire hand feels it. The entire hand experiences it. And when we get away from us against them, and they're the problem, and we own all of it, and say, this is not who we are. This is not what is best for us, that the world will change overnight.
Okay. Cesar? CJ? Junior?
Interesting conversation today. I just think, bringing it back to maybe a little more political, we live in a country that allows us to have these types of conversations and platforms and an opportunity to debate and squabble a bit, per se, about what we believe is truth and not truth, or fact or not fact. I think more importantly than anything, it all goes down to the individual. Until we as a collective whole decide to do what is best for all, that one bad apple will ruin the entire barrel. I mean, it doesn't matter how many great people you have, that one guy is going to blow up the entire school or blow up the entire theater or whatever, no matter how many good people are out there. So whether you want to call it evil, whether you want to call it bad, whether you want to call it misguided, however you want to put it, and maybe it's mental health too, that's another topic. I think that's very interesting. That should be covered. But whatever that may be, I think at the end of the day, it's up to each individual decision. What you decide to do with it, with this life that you're leased, you're giving it for a very quantifiable amount of time, and you get to decide what to do with it. And whether that's good for some and bad for others. I mean, we can debate that here all day, but I think at the end of the day, what's going to matter the most, when you're long gone and a product of the earth once more, it's going to be what CJ mentioned earlier. What was your purpose? What did you leave behind? People will remember how you made them feel. They might not remember your name. They might not remember what you said, but they will remember the impact that you had on them. And I think if we live a little bit like that every day, and we just try to impact the people around us, spread a little bit of good, then we'll be okay.
Yeah, I want to say that, I've lived all over the world. I was born in Colombo, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and I've lived 7 years in Africa and different parts of the world and over Latin America and China. I value my country. Why we're trying to do this is because I value democracy. I value freedom. I mean, real freedom, not the crap the right wing is talking. We're about freedom, and then they take our rights away. I've never lived and I know we talked about this, that rights have been taken away before, but in my lifetime, in my world, I see us digressing and religious factions taking over and removing what is so precious to me, and that's my freedom to make my own decisions, and to have government outside and religion through government trying to tell me what to do. Because if we allow Christianity to do that, the fundamentalists, then why not? We're going to allow the Islam to come and do it, or the Buddhist, or the Confucius, and all the places I lived. We have to respect our differences, our color differences, our size differences, our religion differences, our language differences. This is the United States of America. I can speak any freaking thing I want. And we need to work and continually fight and struggle for real democracy. And to understand, I always say, you don't have to compromise. Everybody says compromise. I say, no. We need to collaborate. And what I mean by saying collaborate, compromise is I'm compromising my values, my beliefs. No, you can have your values and beliefs, but I will collaborate with somebody else with a different view to work together for the good of our country. On the subject and I want to thank Charles and everybody helping me today. I mean, it's been very traumatic for me. I hurt so bad. Love the ones you love. Tell them you love them. Tell your parents while they're still here. Tell your children. Kiss them and hold them. Your friends. Don't be afraid to say to your good male friends, I love you. Because just like that, they're not here. I mean, they're not physically here. But I think the message I get is that they're always with us. They've impacted me. Even if it's Guy for a short period of time or somebody, that you've known for years. The day I don't see Charles, I think I'll be devastated. I won't say anything about Cesar. Maybe we'll be partying. And you too, Clayman. You make a great deal. And all the people from Moyo and everybody. I mean, love your friends. Love the people you don't really love.
Give your flowers while people are alive.
Tell them you care about them. Because I know when my parents passed, I was 60 years old when I appreciated my mom. My God, that woman carried me for 9 months, went through hell, fought my dad, stayed with him even though he cheated on her once or twice. Who knows? Love the people that love you. And I mean, I think if you give love, you'll get love back. And when our time is up, and I don't know if it's because the big guy calls or even if it exists, but we're not going to be here, don't have any regrets. Leave it on the table, right? Let's make a difference in the world with the people you love, with the children that are around you, that respect you. And that's all I have to say. And thank you for watching if you are being part of this. And subscribe and tell your friends. And maybe we can make this even better. And maybe we can learn something from it. Have a good day.
Subscribe,
and
share with your friends.
Thank you.